Today we're going to begin Chapter 3 by talking about lines and angles. Some important definitions we should be familiar with. The first one is parallel lines. And parallel lines are coplanar lines that do not intersect. The symbol for parallel lines can be seen in the pink, two lines appearing to be parallel. Now when we designate parallel lines in a diagram, we use an arrow. So a line that has an arrow on it would be parallel to a line that also has an arrow on it. If I had two arrows on a line, it would be parallel to a line with two arrows, similar to how we designate congruent sides in a triangle or other shape. Skew lines are non-coplanar lines that are not parallel and do not intersect. Since they're non-coplanar, that means we're dealing in 3 dimensions. And so the two red lines in the diagram are skew lines. They're not going to ever intersect, but they're also not parallel. We always have skew lines in 3 dimensions. Parallel planes are planes that do not intersect. And a transversal is a line that intersects 2 or more coplanar lines at distinct points. So again, the red line is an example of a transversal. We have 2 lines intersected by a third line. That would be a transversal. Now more definitions, we have some angle ones we need to look at. Alternate interior angles. So if we think of alternate, they're on opposite sides, and interior means inside. So these are non-adjacent angles that lie on opposite sides of the transversal. And they're going to lie inside the 2 lines. So A and B are examples of alternate interior angles. You see A and B are inside my 2 lines, but on opposite sides of the transversal. Now same side interior lines would be interior angles that lie on the same side of the transversal. So now instead of being on opposite sides, they're going to be on the same side. Corresponding angles are angles that lie on the same side of the transversal, like same side interior, but they're in corresponding spots or in the same type of position. So notice A and B here are corresponding because they're both this corner angle of my diagram. Alternate exterior, so now we're going to be back on opposite sides of the transversal, but we're going to be outside my 2 lines. So notice A and B are outside the 2 lines intersected by the transversal, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal. And same side exterior, we're going to again be outside these 2 lines, but on the same side of the transversal. Now these angles are important because we have some theorems and postulates based on these angles. So corresponding angles postulate says if a transversal intersects 2 parallel lines, then the corresponding angles are congruent. So as long as I have parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. Alternate interior angles are also congruent when I have parallel lines. So if a transversal intersects 2 parallel lines, then alternate interior angles are congruent. Same side interior angles are not congruent, but they are supplementary. So if a transversal intersects 2 parallel lines, then the same side interior angles are supplementary, meaning they add to 180. And our last theorem says alternate exterior angles are going to be congruent, again, when we have a transversal intersecting 2 parallel lines. So if a transversal intersects 2 parallel lines, then alternate exterior angles are congruent. And notice on all of these I have bolded parallel lines because that's the most important part. If the lines are not parallel, the angles are not congruent or supplementary. So I want you to try some examples. Pause the video and see if you can name a pair of each of the following: corresponding, vertical, same side interior, and alternate exterior. And then, if the measure of angle 5 is 51, what are the measures of the following angles? And I want you to try and figure those out. So pause the video and take a second. Welcome back. Let's see how we did. So corresponding, there's lots of different options here. We can have 1 and 5 are corresponding. We have 2 and 6, 4 and 8, and 3 and 7 are all examples of corresponding angles. Vertical angles, we've done that in the last chapter. 2 and 4, 1 and 3, 5 and 7, and 6 and 8 are all vertical. Same side interior, so now we're going to stay on the same side of the transversal, so I have 2 and 5, or 3 and 8. An alternate exterior means opposite sides of our transversal here, so 1 and 7, or 4 and 6. Now, if angle 5 is 51, there's a couple things we can note. 5 and 1 are corresponding, and because we have the corresponding angles theorem, we know that they're congruent. So 1 would be 51. Angle 2 and angle 5 are supplementary. They're same side interior angles. So 180 minus 51 would be 129. Angle 3 and angle 5 are opposite interior or alternate interior angles, and they're congruent, so angle 3 would be 51. Angle 4 and angle 5 are not related in any way, except that we know 2 and 4 are related because of vertical angles, so we know that 4 is going to be equal to 129. Now 5 and 6 are related because they're supplementary, or they're a linear pair, so they're going to add to 180, so 5 is 51, 6 has to be 129. 7 and 5 are vertical angles, so it's going to be 51 degrees because they're congruent. And then 5 and 8 are also a linear pair, so they're going to add to 129. And there are other ways to do it. I know 2 and 8 are congruent because of alternate interiors. So those are just some ways to come up with the answers. And that's it for this video. So if you have any questions, please bring them to class. Have a wonderful evening.